Welcome you using idioms in the IELTS test lesson. Now, what are idioms? They are phrases, words, or expressions that do not have the same meaning as the actual words used in a phrase. In other words, their meaning cannot be taken literally. For example, we can say, I'm over the moon that I got a band 7.5 in IELTS. Obviously, you can't take the words over the moon literally. It does not mean that the person is standing over the moon. The phrase is used when someone wants to express that they are incredibly happy about something that has happened. There are also expressions that are grammatically unusual. For example, so far so good. This means that up until this point in time, things are going well. Now, how are they related to IELTS? This is one of the criteria for achieving a band 7 in IELTS speaking for lexical resource or vocabulary uses some less common and idiomatic vocabulary. So this means that the exam will be trained to spot if you use this type of vocabulary. They're much less common in formal or academic writing, so they are not mentioned in the writing band of scriptures. So forget about them for your writing, though they can be used in an informal letter for general training. Should I learn idioms for the IELTS speaking test? They should be quite low down in your priorities when you're preparing for the IELTS test. Just because they are advanced 7 does not mean you will not get a 7 for lexical resource if you don't use them. And if you do use some, this doesn't automatically mean you'll get 7 for lexical resource. Example, if your general use of lex throughout the test tends to be advanced 6 level, the exam will not give you a 7 just because you fit over the moon in somewhere. Now, using idioms at the right time and in the right context is also quite difficult to learn. Native speakers use them very naturally and exactly in the right context because they've been brought up with language and they don't have to think about it. Imagine you learn the phrase over the moon for the test. You now have to hope the examiner asks you a question where you could fit it in. That could be unlikely, and if you're nervous, it's just something you want to worry about. If you use them unnatural because you're trying to fit them in a test, it will probably be noticeable. You need to be at a level where you can use them fairly naturally. Those who can use them well in the test have not usually studied a book and learned them, but have picked them up through experience, maybe from some time abroad or just from being quite a good speaker of English. However, that is not to say you shouldn't use them, but it depends on your situation. If you're around a band 5.5 level or lower, I would say forget about them for now. At least make them a lower priority. You have much more important things to worry about. You need to work on improving your general vocabulary. For example, try practicing the academic word lists and collocations and improving your fluency and grammar. If you're at a higher level and you have time, you may want to start thinking about what you can do to make yourself just that bit better. And gradually improving your knowledge of these types of expressions and phrases can help you with this. So now let's talk about common idioms. Learning common idioms first is the best way to begin building up your knowledge of these types of words and expressions. So here are some of the most common phrases. Make sure that you check that you know exactly what idioms are and when to use them before you start practicing them. These common idioms are for speaking rather than for writing. So here we have common idiom and their definition. It cost me an arm and a leg to take my trip to Australia, which means very expensive. I was over the moon when he asked me to marry him, which means extremely pleased or happy. You're taking your IELTS test next week. Aren't you jumping the gun? You've only just started studying, which means doing or starting something too early. He comes around to see me once in a blue moon, which means happening very rarely. He's got a chip on his shoulder, which means feeling inferior or having a grievance about something. I reckon getting a band 7 IELTS will be a piece of cake. I'm very good at English, which means very easy. The money sent by Comic Relief to help poverty in Africa is just a drop in the ocean. They need far more than this, which means a very small part of something much bigger. Getting a low score the first time I took IELTS was a blessing in disguise. It forced me to study extremely hard, so I got a much better score the next time, which means something positive that isn't recognized until later. We have to actually do something about global warming. Actions speak louder than words, which means it's better to actually do something rather than just talking about it. I bumped into Jenny in town the other day. It's a small world, which means meeting someone you would not have expected to.